Hi everybody, and welcome to part 3 of my profile picture drawing video. Now the first thing you'll say is, things already colored, but it's not. I went ahead and I set up clipping layers. So this will make it a lot easier, and I'll show you how I did it. So what you do is you go to your ink lines, and you're going to use the wand tool to select everything that's on a particular color. So for this it's the skin layer, so I'm going to highlight all of the skin that I can see. And the purpose of doing this is to put all the different parts of your drawing on different layers so they're easier to adjust later and easier to color. Then you go to select, modify, expand, and just expand it by 1 or 2 pixels so that you get a nice clean edge, and then make a new layer. This one's going to be called skin, and you're going to go to your paint bucket tool, which is under gradient, and you're just going to set the color. And then I like to move my layers so that the deepest thing is at the bottom and everything that is over it goes over it. The next thing I want to talk about is the background color. The background color is a medium gray. It's not white, and the reason for that is it gives me a better sense of what the real colors are. So it's a very medium gray. Now we're going to start off by doing the soft shadows. You want a soft brush, slightly large, and you want it on a relatively low opacity. I'm going to make a new layer called Skin Soft Shadow, and I'm going to make that a clipping layer. So create clipping mask, and what that's going to do is no matter where I color, it's only going to color on the layer that it's a clipping mask of. It doesn't matter if I make it gray or purple, it's not going to color over. So I have that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a color, the skin tone that I'm using. And before I go in with the brushing, I'm actually going to add a gradient. So go into your gradient tool, and I'm going to make it slightly darker. I'm also going to be using the radial gradient as opposed to the up and down. So you'll see that selected. And I'm going to highlight where I think the light is and try to get a nice light spot that I like. That one's pretty good. Now I'm going to go in and do the soft brushing. So imagining that the light is coming down from the top left, I can see where all the shadows are going to be cast. There are going to be some shadows here underneath the hat and underneath the neck. And the way that I'm doing this is I'm imagining now that this is a 3D form and no longer a shape. And what I mean by shape and form is this. A circle is a shape. A sphere is a form. A square is a shape, but a cube is a form. So I'm imagining it as if it's a 3D thing. And when I erase, I make sure that my eraser is equally soft, and I tap around the edges with the mouse. This softens things up because at this point I don't want any harsh shadows. These are the soft shadows that are going to mostly show off a lot of the shade. And you'll notice throughout this video I do a lot of time lapse. This coloring project took about an hour to do, and I wanted to keep the video to about 20 minutes. So you'll see that as soon as I finish this brushing, I'm going to go into a time lapse, but I'm essentially doing the same thing for all the other layers. What you'll see me doing is you'll see me going to new layer, adding a clipping mask, selecting the base color, and adding in more darker soft shadows. So this is the time lapse. It's quite fast. But you can see how adding these soft shadows takes the initial shape that I had and makes it into a 3D form. And you'll notice that each and every colored piece is its own layer. So the layers I have for this, I have layers for the skin, layers for the t-shirt, the black parts of the hoodie, the white parts of the hoodie, the frame of the glasses, the lens of the glasses, the black parts of the ball cap, and the white parts of the ball cap. And the white part of the ball cap is the last part. So now you can see that with these soft shadows, the shape is starting to look more and more 3D. Coloring this way is a little bit of a time-consuming process, but that is now done. Now what you do is you go back all the way down to your skin layer. You're going to add a new layer, and this one's going to be called Soft Light. And the process is quite similar to the soft shadows. I select a light part of the color, and then I just go a little bit lighter. When I select lighter colors, I go up and to the left on the color palette that you'll see on the right hand side of the screen. If I want to go darker, I go down and to the right up to a point. I don't want my shadows to be too vibrant. And what you can see here is now I'm picking out places where that I believe that light is going to be. On a face, this is usually the cheek, the nose, the chin maybe. If it's a person not wearing a ball cap, maybe some parts of the top of the head, maybe some parts of the neck. And this is enhancing that 3D effect. Generally, and this is not always true, but generally the places that are closest to you are going to be the lighter color, and the places that are further away from you are going to be a darker color. And now we're going to go into the time lapse, and you'll see how adding the light further enhances the form of this drawing. And the same process as the soft shadows applies. To erase it, just use a very soft brush with a low opacity and just mouse click around the edges to get a really nice smooth gradient. We're coming up through the glasses, paying attention to the fact that the hat is going to be blocking some of the light, so they're not going to get too much light, and paying attention to the slightly round form of the lenses of the glasses, and paying attention to the fact that the LA logo is raised up off of the hat. And now the soft shadows are just about done. So getting into the hard shadows, we're going to make a few changes to our brush. The first thing is we are no longer going to be using a large brush, we're going to use something smaller. We're also going to use a harder brush, and we're going to use darker colors. And what these hard shadows represent is they represent the umbra of a shadow, which is the darkest part of a shadow, whereas our soft light represents the penumbra. I hope I got those physics terms correct. So I'm going to turn the hardness all the way up so I don't get a soft line, and I'm going to turn the opacity all the way up. The hardest, maybe 80% is okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly sharp. And I'm going to check my color. So now I'm not going to go so far to the right when I pick the dark colors, otherwise these shadows are going to be orange, and I don't want them to be orange. They're saturated enough at this point. And so I'm just going to go through any of the places where there's going to be a hard shadow. Hard shadows are usually closest to things that block light. So the bill of this cap is a huge source of shadow. Any place that the clothing is directly blocking the light is also going to get a hard shadow. And also, there's also going to be hard shadows cast by the clothing. So there are going to be small hard shadows underneath the glasses. And there's going to be a big one right here under the neck. This is a big source for a hard shadow because this is what indicates that the face is further ahead of the neck and it casts its own shadow. And here at the shirt. One thing I should mention is that the size of the shadow indicates how far away the clothing or the source blocking the shadow is. The bill of the cap is quite far from the face, so it has a big shadow. The chin is quite far away from the neck, so it has a big shadow. But these glasses are almost touching the skin, so they're only going to have really small shadow. And of course, this again starts to enhance the 3D effect. You can also pay attention to the nose as well. The nose is going to cast its own shadow, but I don't want to make it too big, otherwise it'll make the nose much bigger than it is. And I'm going to start to define the lips. Now, you'll notice in the reference photo, my lips are kind of a pinkish color. I'm going to avoid that in this drawing because if I do that, he'll look like he's wearing lipstick, and that's not the look that I'm going for today. So just a line to indicate the shadow. Maybe later on when I do some more light stuff, that'll make the lips stick out enough and make it look pretty cool. And then again, for all the other layers, I'm going to continue on doing the hard shadows. And I'm also going to use the eraser to soften up some of the lines on the face. The lip is a little bit too pronounced, so I just want to fade that and put some light on the ear. So taking it into time lapse, you're going to notice that I'm paying attention to how the hoodie is casting shadows on the hoodie and on the clothing. And this is also really useful for separating out different elements in the drawing to make them look different. You can also use it to start making things look 3D. So for the string, I did the hard shadow, but then I softened it up, and that's going to give it a wavy appearance. And paying attention to the glasses. Putting in the hard shadows on the glasses, it was useful to have my reference photo there because there's a lot of light happening in the glasses and it's hard to see the hard shadows. And again, with the hat, making sure that I use these hard shadows to indicate that the LA logo sticks out. Alright. We are now going to do the highlight layer. The highlight layer is not a clipping layer because I want to freely highlight wherever I think it needs to be. I think I made a mistake. Please wait. All the other layers except for the skin are finished, but the skin needs one extra layer, and I like to call this the warming layer. Without it, it's going to make the character look like he's made out of clay, because we're using, flesh tone. But he also has some blood in him, which indicates that he's alive. So we're going to make a new layer. We're going to call it the warmth layer, and we're going to change our base color in our color wheel. We're going to go up closer to the pinks, and we're going to pick kind of a really light pink. And we're going to set the brush the same way we set it for our soft shadows. It's going to be a relatively large brush, quite soft, and quite transparent. So turn the opacity down. And I'm going to place this in places where I want to show a little bit of warmth. So think about like your cheeks, the bottoms of your ears, your neck, places where the blood kind of pumps. And just because it does seem reminiscent of putting on like blush if you ever applied makeup, the whole process of coloring flesh tones to me reminds me a lot of people putting on like makeup. The colors are very similar to the makeup that I've seen my mom use, and so that's what it reminds me of, coloring flesh tones. And if that, and thinking about it like that helps you, you can. And I'm just softening up the edges now using the same soft eraser and the mouse. Okay, now we're ready to go back and do the highlight layer. So for the highlight layer, we go to pure white. I have not used pure white at all in this, and the purpose of that is to make sure that these highlights stand out and that they are the brightest colors. The size is going to be quite small, the hardness is going to be all the way up, and the opacity is going to be all the way up as well. And you'll see me turn that up in 1 second. Like I said, this is not a clipping layer, so I want to be able to draw over everything. So turn the opacity up, and I can draw over everything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply these really strong highlights to anywhere the light is really contacting the drawing. And depending on what you're drawing, adding this layer is the thing that really starts to make things look 3D. And also to indicate what material the thing is made of. For example, these lenses are very shiny. So having high contrast with these highlight layers is going to give them the appearance of being made of a different material than the frames. The frames are kind of a matte finish. They're not going to have these highlights on them. For the skin layer, you don't want to use such a hard highlight. As you can tell, as soon as I put that on there, it looks like he's covered in baby oil. So we'll come back and do the skin tones a little bit later. Other places I can get highlight are going to be on the white parts of the clothes. They're not normally shiny, but they are actually white in color, so giving a little bit of a highlight on them will indicate places where the light is really hitting. And another place I'm going to put quite a highlight is here on the leather jacket. Leather looks like leather because it's shiny, which means you need to have really high contrast. The hoodie doesn't have this high contrast, even though it's the same basic color. Adding these highlights makes the hoodie look like it's actually shiny and made out of leather. Now to just soften up the highlight brush just a little, turn the opacity down, and now I can start doing the highlights on the skin. And like I said, this highlights on skin are not so strong because, you know, small hairs, being relatively dry kind of diffuses direct light. So you don't want to go super high. In fact, these ones are quite strong, but I'm going to use the eraser to fade them. Places that you want to put them are places where it sticks out the mouth, the nose. The lips will usually have quite a good highlight because they can sometimes be wet. And just going to use a soft eraser and fade those down until they look much more normal. And that concludes the highlights. There's one last layer that we're going to add, and this is called rim lighting. So I'm going to call it rim lighting. So the highlights represent direct light from the strongest light source. The rim lighting represents reflected light. Usually cool color, but it doesn't have to be. I could use cool rim lighting on one side of him and red rim lighting on the other side of him, and he'll look like the police are after him. And I'm going to put it on the opposite side of most of the highlights. And what this is going to do is it's going to start giving a stronger 3D effect. Because in reality, we do have multiple sources of light. There's not only just one source of light that hits us. And lots of light can have different colors to it. I'm just going with blue right now because it's my usual go-to color for rim lighting. What I think it does is it cools the drawing as well, because throughout the whole drawing we use a lot of warm color, so it adds more visual interest. And you can see, because I didn't use a clipping layer, I went outside the line. I'm just going to use the wand tool on my original line art, and I'm going to use that to carefully erase this drawing. And that will conclude this 3-part series of me drawing my Facebook profile picture. I did go ahead and finish the background, but it was quite time intensive and not overly interesting, so I don't think I'll do a video on that. So if you stuck with me through the 40 minutes of drawing this, thank you very much, and I look forward to giving you more content in the future. Have a great day.